The first time Ada saw something move under the bed at midnight, she dismissed it as a rat. But when she bent down to look, there was nothing, just darkness and a thick, rotten scent that made her stomach turn. The first time Ada noticed her husband disappearing from their bed at night, she barely paid it any mind. Chinedu was a light sleeper, after all. But when it kept happening, night after night, without a sound, she began to feel uneasy. The house was too silent. She never heard the creak of a door, the shuffle of footsteps. It was as if he simply ceased to exist for those few hours. Ada was my friend, a gentle, soft-spoken woman who carried peace like a second skin. She married Chinedu, a man the world seemed to adore. He had money, charm, and that quiet authority that made people unconsciously adjust their posture in his presence. They met at a wedding, and just 2 months later, they were husband and wife. People called her lucky. But they didn't know what I knew. After the wedding, Ada moved into Chinedu's house in Ikoyi. It was enormous, walled off from the world with a gate that shut like a moth swallowing its prey. At first, she was happy. He was generous, attentive, giving her everything she desired. But then, the strangeness began. One afternoon, she confided in me. "He leaves the bed at night," she whispered. "I never hear him go. I just wake up, and he's gone." "Maybe he's restless," I suggested, but she shook her head. "I don't hear him come back either." Then came the dreams. Night after night, Ada would wake up drenched in sweat, her heart beat like a drum in her ears. In those dreams, she found herself in a dark forest, surrounded by towering trees. And in front of her stood Chinedu. He never spoke, never moved. He simply stared, his gaze heavy with something she couldn't name. Then, he would turn, his body twisting in an unnatural way, until he was no longer a man. A massive snake coiled where her husband had stood, its gleaming scales catching the moonlight before it slithered away into the darkness. At first, she dismissed it as stress, until the night she decided to stay awake. She lay perfectly still, keeping her breath slow and even. Around 2 a.m., Chinedu shifted beside her. She kept her eyes half closed, her heart thudding in her chest. He sat up. Not groggy, not stretching, just awake. A moment later, he was on his feet, moving soundlessly across the room. But he didn't go to the bathroom. He walked to the wardrobe. Ada watched from the corner of her eye. He reached into the back of the wardrobe and pressed his palm against the wood. Something clicked. A hidden compartment. Her fingers gripped the sheets beneath her. She had cleaned that wardrobe dozens of times but never once noticed anything unusual. Chinedu pulled out a long black cloth, one that shimmered as though it had a pulse of its own. It slithered between his fingers like it was alive. He wrapped it around himself, his lips moving in a whisper, speaking words she didn't understand. Then, without a glance back, he slipped out of the room, leaving behind only silence and the lingering scent of something old, something ancient. Ada finally understood. Her husband was not just leaving the bed at night. He was becoming something else. Ada waited a few minutes before following. She stepped carefully, her bare feet soundless against the cool floor. The house felt different tonight, colder, emptier. No lights, no sounds. Just a strange hum, as if the air itself was alive. She reached the back door and slipped outside. That was when she heard it hissing. Not one, but several. Keeping low, she crept behind the garden wall and peeked over the edge. 4 men stood in a tight circle, all dressed in identical black cloth. Their heads were bowed, hands clasped, murmuring something deep and guttural. In the center of them knelt a man, his body trembling violently. His skin rippled, stretched unnaturally. His arms shrank, then disappeared altogether. Ah! Ada pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle a gasp. The man was no longer a man. A massive black snake coiled where he had been, its glistening scales catching the faint moonlight. But it wasn't the transformation that made Ada's stomach lurch, it was the snake's eyes. Familiar, too familiar. Her breath hitched. She scrambled backward, slow and careful, willing the ground not to betray her with a crunch of dried leaves. When she reached the door, she slipped inside and ran straight to the bedroom. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. No matter how many times she told herself to breathe, the air refused to settle in her lungs. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Chinedu greeted her with a warm smile, pressing a kiss to her cheek as he always did. "Pancakes or yam porridge?" he asked, as if nothing had changed. Ada stared at him, her throat dry. Her hands trembled under the table. When she went to make the bed, she found them, snake scales on her pillow. That was the moment she knew. The man she had married was hiding something far darker than she could have ever imagined. But she didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she watched closely. She began to notice things. Guests who lingered too long at their home would suddenly grow weak, their eyes glassy, their movements sluggish. One evening, a family friend even collapsed at the dinner table. Was Chinedu doing something to them? She considered running, but deep down, she knew it wouldn't be that simple. Then came the night she followed him again. Only this time, he saw her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Chinedu's face remained unreadable, his expression eerily calm. No anger. No surprise. "Ada," he said at last, his voice quiet, almost gentle. "You shouldn't have seen this." His tone wasn't threatening, but something about it felt heavier than words. Something that sent a chill curling down her spine. And in that moment, Ada realized she was no longer sure if the man standing before her was a man at all. Ada couldn't speak. Her mouth was dry, her legs refused to move. Fear gripped her so tightly that it felt like her whole body had turned to stone. Then, without thinking, she spun around and ran back into the house. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Chinedu acted as if nothing had happened. He greeted her warmly, even offered to make her tea, his movements casual, his expression unreadable. And that was when Ada knew for sure he was pretending. Hiding something. And worse, he didn't care that she had seen it. After that night, things got worse. She felt sick all the time, weak, dizzy. Her heart would race for no reason. She went to the hospital, but the doctors found nothing wrong. "You're perfectly healthy," they told her, smiling kindly. But she knew the truth. Something in that house was draining her. At night, she heard things. Faint movements. Slithering sounds under the bed. Hissing in the walls. And sometimes, the air would turn cold without warning, wrapping around her like an unseen presence. Then came the night she woke up to find Chinedu standing at the foot of the bed. He was naked. Silent. Just staring. His eyes, they weren't his. They gleamed in the darkness, yellow and reflective like an animal's. Ada shut her eyes, her body stiff with terror. When she finally dared to open them again, he was gone. That was when she started sleeping with a Bible under her pillow. She kept a small bottle of holy water by the bed. She prayed quietly, fervently. But it didn't stop. Sometimes, she'd wake up and find him crouched beside her, watching, not touching, not speaking. Just watching. She didn't tell anyone at first. Not even her best friend, Netchi. Until one day, while sweeping the hallway, her body suddenly gave up. The room tilted, her vision blurred, and she collapsed. When she came to, Chinedu was standing over her. "Are you okay?" he asked. His voice was flat, empty. A question without real concern. That evening, she finally went to Nechi's house. She cried for hours. She told her everything. Nechi listened in silence, her eyes wide with horror. Ada, she said softly, this thing you're describing, it's not normal. It sounds like spiritual bondage. You need help. Ada nodded, but she was exhausted, mentally, physically. Pack your things, Nechi urged. Come stay here. You can't go back there. But Ada was scared. You don't understand, she whispered. That house, it watches me. Even when he's not home, I feel it. Like it knows what I'm thinking. She should have listened to Nechi. She should have left that night. But she didn't. Instead, she went back. Not because she wanted to stay, but because she didn't want to live like a thief. She needed to gather her things properly, her clothes, her documents. She told herself it was just one last night. That evening, Chinedu didn't live like he usually did. He stayed in. They ate dinner together, but he barely touched his food. He only watched her, his gaze unreadable. Then, without warning, he spoke. You've been asking too many questions lately. Ada froze. Slowly, she looked up. His expression was calm. Almost amused. I brought you here to protect you, he continued. But if you keep digging, you'll force my hand. Her pulse pounded. She stood abruptly. What does that mean? Chinedu didn't answer. He only smiled. But it wasn't the smile of a husband. It was something else entirely. Something cold. Something dangerous. That night, she locked the bedroom door. She prayed harder than she ever had in her life. Then, around 2 a.m, she heard it. Not knocking. Not footsteps. Slithering. She turned on the light, heart hammering. The sound was coming from under the door. Then she saw it. A shadow, long, dark, moving too fast to be human. And then, it emerged. A snake. Not just any snake, its body was sleek and black, its movements too smooth, too controlled. And its eyes. Glowing yellow. The same eyes. Ada opened her mouth to scream, but the snake hissed, low, sharp. And before her very eyes, its form began to shift. The air around it twisted. Bones lengthened, skin stretched. The shape morphed, unfolded. And then, standing where the snake had been, was Chinedu. He didn't speak. He only watched her. And Ada finally understood he had never been human. Not really. Naked. Calm. Unbothered. His skin shimmered as if wet, faint scale-like patterns covering his arms. His eyes still glowed. Ada pressed herself into the corner. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Who are you? He took a slow step forward. I'm still your husband, Ada. Just, not like the others. She shook her head, heart pounding. What are you? What did I marry? Chinedu sighed. I come from something older than you can understand. My kind, we don't die like humans. We don't eat like humans. And we don't marry like humans. Ada's knees buckled. She sank to the floor, lips trembling. He crouched beside her, voice softer now. I never wanted to hurt you. But now that you know, you can never leave. Darkness swallowed her before she could respond. When she woke the next morning, she was on the couch. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The house was silent. Chinedu was gone. Her bag sat by the door, already packed. A single note lay beside them. You are free to go. But don't look back. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her things and ran. For weeks, she stayed with Nechi, slowly piecing herself back together. She never spoke of that night. People whispered about Chinedu. Some said he fled the country. Others claimed he vanished. A few swore he went mad. But Ada knew the truth. He never left. He simply went back to whatever place he truly belonged. That house remains locked, untouched, silent. But they say that if you pass by at night, you hear something shifting behind the walls. And if you listen closely, you might hear a whisper. Ada. Like he's still waiting. So tell me, if you were her, would you have stayed to learn the truth? Or would you have run the first chance you got? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And remember, some things are better left unknown. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.